The conversation about digital ownership is done. Everyone already had it. You don't own your games. Sure, fine, we know. That's not what this is. This is about the 1,000 hours you put in. How many of those hours still exist? Because here's the thing nobody's framing correctly. When a platform shuts down or a publisher pulls the license or the servers go offline, they're not just deleting a file. They're deleting time, your time, logged, time-stamped, quantified right there in the save data. And the industry figured out sometime in the last decade or so that this is actually fine. Financially, legally, strategically fine. That's the part that should be uncomfortable. Steam has around 132 million monthly active users. The average Steam library sits at roughly 280 games. The average number of those games that have actually been launched, meaningfully played, hours logged, is somewhere around 40%. So you've got a library of 280, and about 168 of those are functionally display items, digital decorations. You paid for them, they exist on a server somewhere, and they can disappear. 40%. Not 5, not some fringe outlier percentage. 4 in 10 games you own on the largest PC gaming platform exist in a condition somewhere between yours and ours, actually. And that's before the shutdowns start. Between 2022 and 2024, over 50 notable live service games were shut down or announced for shutdown. Some of them had active player bases in the millions. Some of them had players with thousands of hours invested. Anthem, Babylon's Fall, Knockout City, Crossfire X, Hyenas canceled before launch, which is a different kind of impressive. The pattern isn't really about bad games, though. Bad games are just more honest about it faster. Minor inconvenience for the people who put 800 hours in. The mechanism is simpler than you'd think. What you see is a game going offline because it's not profitable enough to maintain. What's actually happening is the cost of the servers exceeds the projected revenue from a shrinking player base, so the platform exercises its legal right, explicitly written into the TOS you agreed to terminate access permanently, with no compensation for anyone, very respectfully. Your 1,000-hour save file isn't a record of achievement, it's a record of tenancy, and the landlord doesn't owe you anything when the building comes down. Totally yours. There's a line buried in pretty much every major platform's TOS, Sony's, Microsoft's, Steam's, EA's, that says something to the effect of, you are purchasing a license to access content, not the content itself, and this license can be revoked. Nobody reads it. It's been there since at least the mid-2000s. The language has barely changed. What changed is the scale of what's sitting behind that sentence. In 2005, a revoked license might cost you a 20-hour single-player game. In 2024, it can cost you 3,000 hours of a live service RPG, a full progression account in a competitive shooter, a streaming watch history that Netflix uses, that you helped curate, and which, when you cancel your subscription, you lose access to instantly. Watch history. You spent years building a profile, rating things, training an algorithm to know what you like, generating behavioral data that is genuinely valuable to the platform, and none of that is transferable, portable, or yours in any meaningful sense. It lives in their system. The profile isn't an asset. It's a lease you don't know you're in. You trained it for 5 years. It knows your taste better than you do. Cancel the subscription, it forgets you instantly. Actually, let's be more specific about the streaming side of this, because the gaming part is almost the easier example. When a streaming service loses licensing rights to a title, a show you're midway through, a series you've watched 4 times, something you recommended to 15 people, it disappears. No warning, no grace period in most cases. Gone from your list, gone from your history, just removed. The show still exists, it's airing somewhere. The physical disc version is probably on sale somewhere for $12, but your access to it through the platform you've been paying $16 a month for, that's predicated entirely on a licensing agreement you have no visibility into and no influence over. The content is a hostage. You're paying the ransom monthly, and the hostage can be moved without notice. This next part is sort of great. When Disney Plus removed a significant chunk of its library in 2023, multiple Star Wars and Marvel productions, some of which had reportedly cost $200 million to make, the stated reason was a tax write-down, writing the content off as a loss while simultaneously removing viewer access to it. The content became more valuable to the company as a financial instrument that didn't exist as something you could watch. That's not even evil, that's efficient. Right. So let's name what's actually happening here, because it's not complicated once you see it. The industry shifted from selling things to selling access. Access is infinitely better as a business model. You collect revenue continuously, you retain control of the asset, and when the relationship ends, the asset returns to you in full. The customer keeps nothing. Their investment of time, money, attention, behavioral data, none of it converts into anything durable. And the specific genius of this, if you want to call it that, is the time dimension. Physical goods depreciate. Your old desk might be worth $3 on eBay, but it's yours. You can play it in 2035 if you feel like it. The access model doesn't depreciate, it just terminates. There's no $3 residual. There's an expiration date you didn't set on an investment you made in hours that are not coming back. 1,000 hours is not casual. 1,000 hours is a second job. 1,000 hours is roughly the length of a human pregnancy, start to finish, spent inside a game that no longer exists. People have put 1,000 hours into games that are now gone, into queues that were wiped, into platforms that pivoted, got acquired, or simply decided the server costs weren't worth it. 1,000 hours. Nobody compensated anyone for that. The closest analogy is something that actually existed, the video rental era. You'd rent a tape, watch it, return it. You weren't building anything. There was no illusion of ownership, no achievement system tracking your progress, no algorithm learning your preferences and using them commercially. You paid for 2 hours and got 2 hours. The subscription model kept the transactional surface of that. You're just renting access, but wrapped it in the aesthetic of a personal library. Your list, your history, your recommendations. The design language is ownership. The legal structure is rental. That gap between how it looks and what it is, that's where the time gets lost. Great system. Same thing with game progression. The achievement, the unlock, the grind, these are all yours in the experiential sense. The dopamine was real. The time was real. The investment was real. The outcome of that investment just isn't stored anywhere you have access to. It's stored on their server, which is their property, which they can terminate. There's been exactly one major legal challenge to this structure worth noting: the 2024 case in the EU around digital resale rights, which ruled that consumers have limited rights to resell certain digital licenses under specific conditions. The platforms responded by updating their TOS to add clarifying language. The conditions the ruling applied to were narrow enough that the core model remained intact. A ruling, a TOS update, consumer protections clarified. Same structure, slightly different wording. Healthy process. The industry isn't going to fix this. There's no financial incentive to fix it. The current model generates more predictable recurring revenue than the old one, retains more data, and creates what analysts actually call, in real documents, as switching costs. The idea that your 400-hour save file, your carefully curated watch list, your progression system, makes it harder to leave. That's not a side effect. That's a feature. They measured how hard it is for you to leave, on purpose. They optimized for it. Someone got a bonus. Healthy relationship. None of this is hidden, really. The TOS is public. The business model is publicly documented. The shutdowns are announced, sometimes. The licensing removals happen on a schedule the platform knows about weeks in advance. But the design, the persistent personal library aesthetic, the achievement tracking, the your this and my that throughout every UI, the design communicates something different. It communicates ownership. It communicates permanence. It communicates that the thing you built is yours. It isn't. And the 1,000 hours you put into building it, those are gone too. The save file still shows the number. It's just on their server, which they can turn off.